The knock on my front door came at 7:30 on a Wednesday night. It was the kind of knock that makes your heart race for no reason at all, loud, sharp, and completely unexpected. I was sitting on the couch, beer in hand, flipping through channels trying to find something decent to watch. Sarah, my wife, had just gone upstairs to put the kids to bed, and I figured we'd settle into our usual midweek routine. But that knock, it shattered the calm in a way I couldn't explain. I wasn't expecting anyone, and neither were the kids. Our neighbors weren't the drop-in type, and delivery drivers usually didn't come this late. So, I opened the door cautiously, not really sure what to expect. Standing there was a guy, probably mid-30s, dressed in a cheap suit with the kind of face you'd forget the moment he walked away. But there was something about the way he looked at me, like he had something to say but was dreading every second of it. "Dave, right?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Yeah, who's asking?" I shot back, instantly on edge. He didn't introduce himself. Instead, he pulled a manila envelope from under his arm and held it out to me. "You're going to want to see this." I stared at the envelope like it was about to explode. Everything about this felt off. "What the hell is this?" I asked, not making a move to take it. "Just, take a look." "I'm sorry, man." That was all he said before he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with a sinking feeling in my gut. I could still hear his shoes tapping against the pavement as he disappeared into the night, leaving me alone with that damn envelope in my hand. I shut the door, staring at it like I could somehow wish it away. But I couldn't. So I walked back into the living room, tossed the envelope onto the coffee table, and stared at it for what felt like hours. My heart was racing, and I hadn't even opened it yet. What the hell could be in there? Bad news? Something about the kids? About Sarah? My mind raced through 100 scenarios, none of them good. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single flash drive. No note, no explanation, just that small, cold piece of plastic. I didn't want to plug it in. I wanted to throw it away, pretend it never existed. But something in me, some deep, twisted instinct, told me I had to see what was on it. I grabbed my laptop, hands trembling as I inserted the drive. The screen flickered to life, and a folder popped up. There was just one file inside, plainy.mp4. I hesitated. If I clicked that file, everything could change. But not knowing, that would eat me alive. So, I clicked it. The video started playing, shaky at first, like it had been filmed on a phone. The angle wasn't great, low to the ground, pointed up slightly. It was a hotel room, that much was clear. A pair of legs came into view, and then, there she was. Sarah. My wife. Laughing. Kissing a man who wasn't me. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't breathe. My stomach twisted into knots as I watched them, Sarah and this stranger, moving around the room, hands all over each other. It wasn't a random hookup. This was intimate. This was planned. This was a betrayal I never saw coming. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding in my chest. The room spun, and I felt like I was going to throw up. Every part of me wanted to scream, to rage, to break something, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the shock, the disbelief. The woman I'd shared my life with for 12 years had just blown it all to hell, and I had the evidence, right there in my hands. I didn't need to watch anymore. I'd seen enough. Just then, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Sarah, oblivious to the destruction she'd left in her wake, smiling like nothing had changed. I looked at her, trying to process what I'd just seen. She had no idea that in the last 5 minutes, she'd shattered everything. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, completely unaware. I couldn't even form the words. How do you begin to explain to someone that you've just seen the moment they destroyed your life? My hands were shaking. Sarah stood there at the foot of the stairs, asking me about something that seemed so ordinary, something that no longer mattered. "What's up?" she had said. Like it was any other night. Like my world hadn't just imploded. I couldn't respond. I didn't know how to. There was a weight in my chest that made it hard to breathe, let alone talk. I just stared at her. She looked confused for a moment, but not worried. Why would she be? She didn't know what I had just seen. She didn't know that the envelope, the flash drive, the video had dropped an atom bomb on our marriage. Dave, she asked again, her voice a little more serious now, sensing something was off. But I couldn't tell her. Not yet. I wasn't ready for what would come next, because I knew once the words came out, there'd be no going back. She was still looking at me like I was the one acting strange. Maybe I was. I didn't feel like myself anymore. I felt hollow, like something had been ripped out of me. The shock, the betrayal, the rage, all of it was swirling around inside me, but I couldn't let it out. Not yet. I need some air, I managed to mutter. It was the best I could come up with. Sarah watched me as I grabbed my jacket and practically stumbled out the front door. I didn't even hear her say anything as I left. Outside, the night was cold and still, but it didn't help. It didn't calm me down. My heart was still racing, my mind still spinning. I stood there for a moment, leaning against the side of the house, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash something, punch something, but all I could do was stand there, feeling numb and overwhelmed. What the hell was I supposed to do now? I tried to think rationally, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that video again. I saw Sarah, my wife, in that hotel room with some guy, kissing him, touching him. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was deliberate. Planned. And now I knew. There was no going back inside and pretending everything was fine. I couldn't look at her the same way ever again. Every second that passed, every moment I stood out there in the cold, the realization sunk in deeper. Our life, our marriage, it was all a lie. I needed to know more. I needed answers. But part of me also wanted to walk away right then and there, to leave and never come back, because I knew once I opened that door, everything would get worse. I paced around the driveway for a few minutes, trying to calm myself down, trying to figure out what to do next. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed to get my head straight first. But how the hell do you get your head straight when your whole life just got ripped apart? Then I remembered the envelope. The guy who had dropped it off, he knew. He knew something. And there was no way he just randomly showed up at my door without some kind of agenda. Who the hell was he? What did he want from me? I pulled my phone out and stared at it for a second, thinking about calling him. The number wasn't in the envelope, though, and I didn't get a card or anything. But there was something familiar about him, something I couldn't quite place. Like maybe I'd seen him before, but where? I walked back inside the house, trying to avoid Sarah, but she was standing in the kitchen now, leaning against the counter, her arms crossed. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes narrowing a little, like she was trying to figure out why I was acting weird. I didn't answer her. I just grabbed the flash drive off the coffee table and shoved it into my pocket. She watched me, probably wondering why I hadn't said a word, why I was acting like a stranger in my own house. I didn't care. I needed space, and I sure as hell needed time to figure out how I was going to deal with this. "I'll be back," I mumbled, heading for the garage. "Dave, wait," she started, but I was already out the door again. I couldn't stand to hear her voice. Not after what I'd seen. Not after what I knew. I got into my car and just sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The garage felt like a tomb, the silence pressing in on me from every side. I turned the engine over, not really knowing where I was going, but knowing I had to get out of there. I had to clear my head. I drove around the neighborhood for a while, going nowhere, just trying to figure out what to do. What the hell do you do when you find out your wife's been screwing some guy behind your back? How do you confront her? How do you even start that conversation? I didn't have answers. I didn't have anything, except this burning rage and confusion that was eating me alive. I pulled into an empty parking lot near the park, shut off the engine, and sat there, staring out the windshield. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Sarah. "Are you okay? What's going on?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I pulled out the flash drive again. I had my laptop in the back seat. I always kept it with me for work. I plugged the drive into the laptop and opened the file again. I don't know why I did it. I don't know what I was hoping to see. Maybe I was hoping it wasn't as bad as I thought. Maybe I wanted to believe that somehow I was wrong, that it wasn't her, that I had imagined the whole thing. But no. There it was again, as real as anything. Sarah, laughing with this guy, getting undressed, kissing him. It was her. There was no doubt. The video was about 10 minutes long. I forced myself to watch the whole thing this time, every second of it. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see how deep this betrayal went. The video ended with them lying in bed, talking quietly, like they didn't have a care in the world. I slammed the laptop shut again, disgusted. My stomach churned. I could feel the bile rising in the back of my throat. How long had this been going on? Who was this guy? And why the hell did someone send this to me? I couldn't just sit there and stew anymore. I needed to do something, anything, to get to the bottom of this. I needed to talk to her. I needed answers. So I drove home, faster this time, my mind racing just as fast as the car. I had to confront her. I had to know the truth. I pulled into the driveway, my hands still shaking as I killed the engine. The house was dark now, except for the faint glow of the kitchen light. Sarah was probably still up, waiting for me to come back inside. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but it didn't help. My heart was pounding in my chest as I opened the door and stepped into the house. She was sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in her hand, her phone on the table in front of her. She looked up as I walked in, her face a mix of confusion and concern. "Dave, what's going on? You've been acting weird all night." I stood there, staring at her, trying to find the words. But I couldn't. Instead, I pulled the flash drive out of my pocket and tossed it onto the table in front of her. "Explain this," I said, my voice low and steady, though inside, I was shaking. She froze, her eyes widening as she looked at the drive, then back at me. "What is that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You know exactly what it is," I shot back. "So start talking." The color drained from her face. She didn't reach for the drive. She didn't say a word. She just stared at me, and in that moment, I knew. I knew everything. The silence between us stretched out, thick and heavy. Sarah was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the flash drive like it was some kind of bomb about to go off. Her face had gone pale, and I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what to say, how to spin this, how to escape the inevitable. But there was no escape. Not this time. I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my chest, every nerve in my body on edge. The room felt too small, the air too thin. I was ready for a fight. I wanted her to say something, anything, that would explain what the hell was going on, even though deep down I knew there was no explanation that would make this better. "Are you going to say something?" I finally asked, my voice low, almost too calm for what I was feeling inside. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, like a deer caught in headlights. "Dave, I don't know what you're talking about." I scoffed. "Don't play dumb, Sarah. You know exactly what this is. You think I'm an idiot? You think I didn't see what was on that drive?" Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She was scrambling, trying to find an excuse, a lie that might save her. But the truth was already out there, hanging in the air between us, and there was no way she could talk her way out of this. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Who's the guy in the video?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she repeated, her voice shaky now, but still trying to hold on to the lie. "There's nothing on that drive, Dave. I don't even know where that came from." I slammed my hand down on the table, hard enough to make her jump. "Stop lying," I shouted, the anger finally spilling out. I saw it, Sarah. I saw you with him. I saw everything. Her face twisted in fear, and she flinched back from me, her hands trembling in her lap. For a moment, I thought she might break, that the truth might finally come spilling out. But instead, she doubled down. Dave, you're scaring me, she said, her voice wavering. I don't know what you think you saw, but it's not what you think. I swear, there's nothing going on. Please, just calm down. Calm down? I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. You want me to calm down? After what I just saw? She stood up, taking a step back from the table, trying to put some distance between us. Her eyes darted toward the door, like she was considering running, but she didn't move. Not yet. Dave, please, she pleaded. Just listen to me. Whatever you saw, it's not what you think. It's not. I mean, not what I think. I cut her off, stepping closer. I saw you, Sarah. I saw you with another man. I don't need to think anything. It's right there, in the video. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might start crying. But then, something shifted in her eyes, and I saw the gears turning in her head. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to apologize. She was going to try to spin this, to manipulate the situation. I could see it in the way her posture straightened, the way her breathing slowed. Dave, she started, her voice soft, almost gentle, you've been under a lot of stress lately. With work, the kids, everything, maybe you're not seeing things clearly. Maybe someone's trying to mess with you. I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. Was she really going to try to gaslight me right now? After everything? Are you serious? I asked, my voice low, dangerous. You're going to stand there and try to make me think I'm crazy? That I didn't just see what I saw? She took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto mine, and I could see the calculation in her expression. I don't know who sent that to you, Dave, but it's not real. Someone's trying to mess with us, with you. They're trying to destroy what we have. What we have. I repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity of it. Sarah, what we have is a fucking lie. How long has this been going on? How long have you been sneaking around behind my back? She flinched again, her composure cracking just a little, but she didn't back down. It's not what you think, she said, her voice firmer now, more confident. I didn't cheat on you, Dave. I would never do that. You're my husband. I love you. Don't you dare say that, I snapped, my voice cold. Don't you dare say you love me. Not after this. For the first time, I saw real panic flash across her face. She knew I wasn't buying it. She knew the lies weren't working, and she was running out of options. Dave, please, she said, her voice breaking now, the panic rising. I can explain. Just give me a chance to explain. Then explain, I demanded, crossing my arms and glaring at her. I'm all ears. Tell me how you ended up in a hotel room with some random guy. Tell me how that's not cheating. Go ahead. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I could see her mind racing, trying to come up with something, but she had nothing. There was no explanation that could fix this. No lie that could undo what I'd seen. Finally, she let out a shaky breath and sank back down into the chair, her head in her hands. I made a mistake, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, waiting for her to continue, to finally admit the truth. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, her voice trembling. It was just. I don't know. I wasn't thinking. It didn't mean anything, Dave. I swear, it didn't mean anything. I felt a surge of anger rise up in me again, and I clenched my fists at my sides. It didn't mean anything? I repeated, my voice hard. You cheated on me, Sarah. You destroyed our marriage. And you're standing there, telling me it didn't mean anything? Tears started to spill down her cheeks now, but I didn't care. I couldn't bring myself to care. Not after everything. It was a mistake, she sobbed. I'm so sorry, Dave. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, you have to believe me. It didn't mean anything. It's over. I swear, it's over. How long? I asked, my voice flat. What? She sniffed, wiping at her eyes. How long has this been going on? I repeated, my voice cold and steady. How many times have you cheated on me? She hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the door again. It didn't, it's not like that, she stammered. It only happened a couple of times. I swear, Dave, it's not what you think. I shook my head, disgusted. A couple of times? Jesus, Sarah. Do you even hear yourself right now? She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Please, Dave, she whispered. I love you. I don't want to lose you. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can. No, I interrupted, my voice firm. We're not fixing this. You made your choice. You chose him. You chose to destroy everything we had. She flinched at my words, her tears flowing freely now. Dave, please, she begged, reaching out toward me. Don't do this. Don't throw everything away. We can still fix this. We can still be a family. I stepped back, out of her reach, my heart pounding in my chest. It's too late, I said, my voice cold. It's over. Her face crumpled, and she collapsed onto the table, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood there, watching her, feeling nothing but a hollow emptiness where my love for her used to be. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her there in a mess of tears and broken promises. I grabbed my keys from the counter and headed for the door. Where are you going? She called after me, her voice desperate. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I walked out the door, slamming it shut behind me, and drove off into the night. I drove through the night with no destination in mind, just raw anger driving me forward. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles white, my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. The adrenaline from the confrontation with Sarah was still surging through me. Every time I thought about her sitting at that table, trying to explain away what she had done, it made me want to scream. She wasn't sorry. She was just scared of getting caught, scared of losing her comfortable life. None of it had been about me, not her lies, not her tears. It was all about her. As I sped through the empty streets, I started to think about what I could do next. Sarah thought she had gotten away with it, that she could somehow talk her way out of this. She didn't know how far I was willing to go. She didn't know that I was done playing the role of the good husband, the forgiving fool. I wasn't going to forgive her. I wasn't going to let her off easy. I pulled into an empty parking lot and shut off the engine, the silence of the night pressing in around me. I sat there for a moment, my thoughts racing. The old me, the one who would have tried to fix things, was gone. All that was left was a man with nothing to lose. And if Sarah was going to destroy our marriage, then I was going to make sure she paid for it. I wasn't sure where to start, but then it hit me. She had been trying to cover her tracks, downplaying everything, acting like it was a mistake. She thought she was in control of the situation. But she didn't know I had all the cards. I had the video. And more than that, I had the will to use it. That's when the plan started to form. It wasn't just about leaving her. It was about making sure that when I walked away, she'd have nothing left. I would strip away everything she had taken for granted, her reputation, her relationships, her life. She'd lose it all, and I'd be the one to make it happen. The first thing I needed was evidence, more than just the video. I needed everything. Phone records, texts, emails, anything that showed the extent of her betrayal. I already had the most damning piece of evidence, but I wanted to leave no stone unturned. I drove back home, parking a couple of blocks away so I wouldn't wake the neighbors. I needed to move quietly. When I walked in, the house was dark. Sarah wasn't in the kitchen anymore, probably upstairs crying, trying to figure out how to patch things up. She didn't know it was already too late. I slipped into the office and powered up the desktop. Sarah wasn't exactly a tech genius, she used the same password for everything. A couple of tries later, I was in her email, scrolling through years of messages. Most were mundane, conversations with clients, updates from friends. But then I found them emails from him. His name was Matt. Of course it was. It was always some asshole with a forgettable name, some guy who slipped into your life without making waves, until he blew everything apart. The emails were explicit. They made me sick, but I kept reading. I needed to know how deep this went. Some were from months ago, others from last week. They talked about meeting up, hotels, places I knew she'd gone, all while pretending it was for work or a night out with friends. I could feel the bile rising in my throat, but I forced myself to keep going. I forwarded all the emails to myself, creating a nice little file that I could use later. I wasn't just collecting this for my own satisfaction. No, this was going to be part of something much bigger. Next, I went after her texts. Her phone was upstairs, but I knew how to get in. Sarah wasn't one for locking things up, probably never thought I'd check. I went upstairs, moving as quietly as I could. The house was dead silent, and when I reached the bedroom, I saw the light from her phone screen illuminating the room. She was asleep, curled up on her side, her face streaked with dried tears. Good. I took the phone from her nightstand and stepped back out into the hallway, unlocking it with ease. The texts were even worse than the emails. There were pictures too, ones I didn't want to see, but I couldn't look away. I scrolled through their conversations, seeing how they joked about me, about how easy it was for her to sneak around. How she thought I was too trusting, too stupid to figure it out. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall, but I didn't. Instead, I took screenshots of everything, every message, every picture, and sent them to my email. When I was done, I carefully placed the phone back where I found it and went downstairs, feeling like I was going to explode. But I couldn't explode yet. I wasn't finished. I opened my email and saved everything to a USB drive. That was step 1. Now came the real plan. Sarah wasn't just going to lose me, she was going to lose everything. I knew exactly how to make that happen. The first thing I did was contact a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best divorce attorney I could find. I wasn't going to settle for some half-assed agreement where she walked away with half of everything we'd built. No. She was going to walk away with nothing. I made an appointment for the next morning, explaining the situation briefly over the phone. The lawyer was interested. He'd handled cases like this before, and he assured me that with the evidence I had, I'd be in a strong position. But I wasn't just planning on legal revenge. That wasn't enough. Sarah had a reputation in this town, and it wasn't going to survive what was coming. She was active in the community, had a circle of friends who thought she was perfect, the devoted wife and mother, the successful real estate agent. They didn't know the truth. But they would soon. I spent the next few hours preparing everything. I created anonymous accounts on social media and email, ready to distribute the evidence when the time came. I drafted messages for her friends, her colleagues, even her parents. They were going to see the real Sarah. Not the version she pretended to be, but the one who'd thrown away her marriage for some guy she met online. I printed copies of the emails and the texts, too. I made enough to send to her workplace, to her boss, to the real estate board. She wasn't going to work in this town again. Not after this. By the time I was finished, the sun was starting to rise. I hadn't slept, but I didn't feel tired. I felt alive, like I was in control again. Sarah was still upstairs, probably thinking we could fix this, probably thinking she could win me back with more lies, more tears. She had no idea what was about to hit her. I grabbed the USB drive, the printed copies, and the notes I'd made for the lawyer and headed for the door. I had an early appointment, and I wanted to make sure I was prepared. But before I left, I went back upstairs one more time. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, looking at her sleeping form. For a moment, I felt something, some small flicker of the love I used to feel for her. It was buried deep, under layers of anger and betrayal, but it was still there, faint and distant. But then I remembered the video. The emails. The texts. The love died in an instant. I stepped out, closing the door quietly behind me. By the time she woke up, the wheels would already be in motion. The lawyer would be ready. The evidence would be in place. And Sarah's life as she knew it would be over. I walked out of the house, not looking back. There was no turning back now. I sat in my car outside the lawyer's office, gripping the steering wheel, just staring out at nothing. The meeting had gone exactly as planned. The lawyer was sharp, methodical, and more than willing to go for the throat. I walked him through the evidence, every sordid detail, every incriminating message, every explicit picture. He barely flinched, just nodded, and told me what my options were. Divorce was the easy part, making sure she walked away with nothing was trickier. But not impossible. We were going for full custody of the kids, minimal alimony. I wasn't going to let her take half of what I'd worked for. She could leave with her clothes, and that was it. That was the plan. My lawyer said it would be a battle, but with what I had on her, the odds were in my favor. He was confident, and that gave me some sense of relief. But it wasn't enough. Winning in court wasn't enough. I needed more than just legal justice. I needed closure. I needed to look her in the eye, tell her it was over, and feel something break inside her the way it had broken inside me when I first watched that video. I was ready for that moment now. I started the car, gripping the wheel harder than I needed to. The drive home was a blur, my mind already playing out the conversation. I knew exactly what I was going to say, exactly how I'd make it clear that this wasn't just about a divorce. It was about cutting her out of my life completely. I was going to make sure there was no coming back from this. When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah's car was still there. Of course, it was. Where else would she go? She'd probably spent the whole day in bed, crying, hoping I'd come back calm and ready to talk things out. But that wasn't going to happen. I walked into the house, the air feeling heavy, like it knew what was coming. I found her in the living room, sitting on the couch with her knees pulled up to her chest. She was wearing one of those old sweatshirts she loved, the one I used to think was cute on her, back when things were good. Back when I didn't know what kind of person she really was. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked up at me with that same desperate expression I'd seen the night before. She was trying to gauge where I was at, trying to see if there was still hope. "Dave," she started, her voice soft, weak, like she was still trying to play the role of the wounded wife. "Can we talk?" I walked past her and into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and leaned against the counter. I didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her attempt to open the conversation. I wanted her to feel the distance, the coldness. I wanted her to know this wasn't going to be a negotiation. She waited a moment, then got up from the couch and followed me into the kitchen. She stood there, a few feet away, fidgeting with her hands like a guilty child caught in a lie. "Dave," she said again, her voice trembling. "I know I hurt you. I know I made a mistake. But please, we can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can talk about what went wrong. We can make it right. I'll do whatever it takes." I took a long drink of water, letting her words hang in the air. When I finally set the bottle down, I looked her in the eyes. "You think this can be fixed?" I asked, my voice calm, controlled. "After everything? After what you did?" Her face crumpled, but she nodded. "Yes, I do. I know I screwed up, Dave. I know. But we have a family. We've built a life together. We can't just throw that away." "I didn't throw anything away," I said, my voice hardening. "You did. You threw it all away the moment you decided to sleep with him." She flinched at my words, the truth of it hitting her like a slap. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. She had to keep trying. "It was a mistake," she said, her voice breaking. "It wasn't love. It wasn't anything. It was just. I was stupid, and I—" "You didn't just make a mistake, Sarah," I interrupted. "You lied. You snuck around. You planned this. It wasn't some drunken one-night stand. It was deliberate. You made a choice. And that choice killed whatever we had. She stared at me, her eyes filling with tears again. Please, Dave, she whispered. Please don't say that. We can still be a family. The kids, they need us. They need both of us. I felt a sharp stab of anger at that, at how easily she brought the kids into it, like they were her safety net. Like she could hide behind them to avoid the consequences of what she'd done. They'll always have me, I said coldly. But you? You're not going to be part of their lives the way you think. Her face went pale, and she took a step back, her hands trembling. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm filing for divorce, I said bluntly, watching the words hit her like a sledgehammer. And I'm going for full custody of the kids. I'm not going to let them live in a house with someone who lies and cheats. Someone who betrayed everything we built. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she looked like she couldn't breathe. Full custody? She repeated, her voice shaky, disbelieving. You can't do that, Dave. You can't take them away from me. I can, I said. And I will. Tears started streaming down her face again, but I didn't care. I was past the point of feeling sorry for her. She had made her bed, and now she was going to lie in it. Dave, please, she begged, her voice breaking. You can't do this. They're my kids too. I love them. I shook my head, disgusted. You love them? You think this is love? What kind of example were you setting for them? Sneaking around, lying, betraying the person you were supposed to love? That's not love, Sarah. That's selfishness. She was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking, her hands covering her face as she tried to hold herself together. But there was no holding it together anymore. The dam had broken, and everything was falling apart. I'll fight you, she whispered through her tears. I won't let you take them away from me. I'll fight for them. Good luck, I said, my voice cold. Because I've already hired a lawyer. And with everything I've got on you, you don't stand a chance. Her sobs grew louder, more desperate, but I didn't flinch. I didn't offer her comfort. I just stood there, watching her fall apart. She tried to speak again, but the words were lost in her tears, her voice cracking under the weight of everything she had done. And for the first time, I saw it, real regret. Not the kind she had tried to fake before, not the crocodile tears or the excuses. This was the raw, painful realization that she had lost everything. But it didn't matter anymore. It was too late. I'm going to stay at Tom's tonight, I said, turning to leave. I'll be back tomorrow to get my things. After that, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. I started walking toward the door, not waiting for her to respond. But as I reached the hallway, I heard her call out one last time, her voice hoarse from crying. Dave, please. I stopped but didn't turn around. I couldn't look at her. Not anymore. What? I asked, my voice tired, drained. Do you still love me? The question hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know how to answer. I thought about all the years we'd spent together, the good times, the laughter, the moments when I truly loved her. And then I thought about the betrayal, the lies, the way she had thrown it all away for some guy she barely knew. Did I still love her? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and then I turned to face her. No, I said, the word cutting through the silence like a knife. I don't. Her face crumpled, and the sobs started again, but I didn't stay to watch. I walked out the door, into the cold night air, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. As I got into my car, I realized that the love I'd once had for Sarah wasn't just gone, it had died the moment I saw that video. There was nothing left now. Nothing but the cold, hard truth. It was over. Completely. The drive to Tom's place was quiet. The streetlights flickered by, casting brief flashes of light across the windshield. I wasn't thinking about much, just letting the events of the last 24 hours roll through my mind. Everything had happened so fast. 1 minute I was living my life, the next it was all ripped apart, lying in pieces. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel now. Numb? Relieved? Maybe a little of both. Tom lived about 10 minutes away. We've been friends for years, long before I met Sarah. He was the one person I could trust right now. When I pulled into his driveway, the house was dark. It was late, almost midnight, but I knew he wouldn't mind. I texted him earlier, just a heads up that I might need a place to crash. Didn't give him any details, just said I'd explain when I got there. I knocked, and a minute later, Tom opened the door, his face groggy, but his expression changing the second he saw me. "Jesus, Dave," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "What the hell happened?" "Long story," I muttered, stepping inside. "You got a beer?" He nodded, wordlessly walking to the fridge and grabbing a couple of bottles. We sat in silence for a minute, just the clink of the bottle caps as we twisted them off, the faint hum of the fridge filling the room. I took a long swig, feeling the cold liquid slide down my throat. It helped, but not by much. "I don't even know where to start," I finally said, setting the bottle down on the table in front of me. "Sarah, she's been cheating." Tom didn't say anything at first. He just leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed like he was trying to process what I'd just told him. Then he shook his head slowly. "I had no idea. You two seemed, I don't know, like you were solid." "Yeah, we were," I said, the bitterness creeping into my voice. "Or at least, that's what I thought. Turns out she was screwing some guy named Matt behind my back. I found out last night." Tom sat up a little straighter. "Jesus, Dave. How'd you find out?" I let out a harsh laugh. "Some guy dropped off a flash drive at the house. Didn't say who he was, just handed it to me and left. When I opened it, there it was. Sarah and this guy in a hotel room. There's more to emails, texts. The whole fucking thing." Tom shook his head again, his face a mix of sympathy and disbelief. "Man, that's rough. I don't even know what to say." "I don't need you to say anything," I replied, my voice flat. "I'm done. I confronted her earlier tonight, told her it's over. I already talked to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce, going for full custody of the kids." Tom took another sip of his beer, staring at the table in front of him like he was trying to piece it all together. "I don't blame you," he said after a minute. "But man, this is going to be rough. For you. For the kids." "I know," I said quietly. "But I don't have a choice. She killed everything. There's no fixing it. I don't even want to try." Tom nodded, his eyes filled with the kind of understanding that only comes from years of friendship. He didn't push, didn't try to offer me any advice or platitudes. He just let me sit there in silence, letting the weight of it all settle in. After a while, Tom showed me to the spare room. It wasn't much, just a bed and a dresser, but it was all I needed. I tossed my bag down on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank wall in front of me. The silence was deafening, and for the first time, it really hit me, this was my new reality. This was the first night of the rest of my life, and I was completely alone. I lay down, my mind racing. I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah, about the kids, about what the next few weeks would look like. I wasn't scared, I knew I was doing the right thing, but it didn't make it any easier. I thought about Emily and Jake, how this was going to turn their world upside down. How could it not? I tried to imagine what I'd say to them, how I'd explain it, but nothing sounded right in my head. Eventually, sleep took over, but it wasn't peaceful. My dreams were scattered, fragments of the past few days mixed with old memories, happier times with Sarah before it all went wrong. When I woke up, the sun was already creeping through the window blinds. It was too early, but I couldn't sleep anymore. I needed to get moving. I got dressed and made my way downstairs. Tom was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, reading something on his phone. He looked up when I walked in, nodding toward the coffee pot. "Help yourself." I poured a cup and sat down across from him, the silence between us comfortable, but heavy with unspoken things. "So, what's your next move?" Tom asked, finally breaking the silence. "I'm going back to the house," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "I need to pack up my things. Sarah's probably still there, but I don't care. I'm not staying." Tom nodded slowly. "Need any help?" I shook my head. "I got it. But thanks." I finished my coffee and left. The drive back to the house felt different this time. Yesterday, it was the place I'd called home for years, the place where I thought I'd grow old with Sarah, raise our kids, live the life we'd promised each other. Today, it was just a building. A place filled with memories that no longer meant anything. When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah's car was still there. I had hoped she'd be gone by now, but no such luck. I parked and walked to the front door, my mind already focused on the task at hand. Get in, get my stuff, and get out. No more conversations, no more begging or crying. I was done. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, expecting to see Sarah, but the bed was made, and there was no sign of her. The silence pressed down on me as I opened the closet and grabbed a couple of suitcases from the top shelf. I started packing, moving through the room like a robot. Clothes, toiletries, a few personal items. I didn't need much. I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. The whole time, I kept waiting for Sarah to appear, to try to stop me, but she never did. When I had everything packed, I took one last look around the bedroom. This had been our room, the place where we shared our lives, our secrets, our dreams. And now it was just another space filled with things that didn't matter anymore. I zipped up the suitcases and headed downstairs. As I walked past the living room, I saw her. Sarah was sitting on the couch, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red from crying. She looked up as I passed, but she didn't say anything. She just watched me, like she knew this was the last time. I stopped at the front door, turning to face her one last time. I didn't have much left to say, but I felt like I had to say something. "This is it, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "There's no going back." She nodded, her voice barely audible. "I know." I stared at her for a moment, waiting for some kind of reaction, some sign that she understood the gravity of what had happened. But she just sat there, defeated, broken. Maybe she finally realized that this was all her doing. That there was no one else to blame but herself. I opened the door and stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face as I walked to the car. As I loaded the suitcases into the trunk, I felt lighter. Not happy, not relieved, but lighter. Like I was finally starting to let go of the weight I'd been carrying around since I found out about the affair. When I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me in that house, nothing left in the life Sarah and I had built together. It was over. Completely, finally, over. Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. My lawyer was relentless, pushing hard to make sure I got full custody of the kids, and with the evidence I had, Sarah didn't have much of a leg to stand on. We didn't have many arguments, just a few strained conversations through our lawyers. She didn't fight as hard as I thought she would. Maybe she was too ashamed, or maybe she knew she couldn't win. I moved into a small apartment not far from the kids' school. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A fresh start. The kids stayed with me most of the time, and when they weren't, I threw myself into work or the gym, anything to keep my mind busy, to keep myself from thinking too much. The hardest part was explaining things to Emily and Jake. I told them the truth, in a way that wouldn't hurt them too much. I didn't tell them everything, but they understood enough. They were angry, confused, but eventually, they started to accept it. We all did. In the end, what I learned from all this is that sometimes, there's no fixing things. Sometimes, people make choices that can't be undone, no matter how much they regret them. Sarah made her choice, and I made mine. And now, I was finally free. There was still pain, still a lot of things to work through, but at least I knew one thing for sure, I didn't need her anymore.